Hi, I'm Claire Tulloch, Content Director at Tembo. We're an agency specialising in providing marketing content services, and we also connect event organisers with freelance resource. I'm going to cover what next for virtual events. The two big questions everyone in events is grappling with currently are, when will in-person events return, and what formats are they likely to return in? Most event organisers I'm speaking to are expecting in-person events to return in H2, and most are planning to return with some form of hybrid model. It doesn't feel like digital events are a passing fad or a temporary fix. I think some sort of hybrid model of an in-person and virtual component is likely to remain, at least in the short term, for a number of reasons. Even after the vaccination process, it's not clear if and when companies will allow their attendees to go to in-person events. Having seen savings in travel accommodation and time, will they have made allowances for attendance in their budgets this year? Will individuals themselves feel comfortable travelling to and from and attending in-person events? Due to the ongoing need for social distancing, in-person events are likely to be constrained on attendee numbers. So flexibility will be fundamental in the months ahead, with event organisers needing to anticipate changing circumstances. We may be subject to snap lockdowns for a while to come, which may mean turning a hybrid conference into a fully virtual one at short notice. Longer term, digital transformation and the adoption of new technology has advanced significantly over the past year, and audiences are becoming more comfortable with using virtual tools. It looks likely that developments in virtual tech are only going to continue at a rapid pace. This may mean that audiences are happy to attend fewer events in person and watch some as a virtual attendee. I think also concerns about environmental factors and sustainability are likely to remain at the top of business agendas, which may lead to a reduction in business travel, particularly overseas. The result is, for some of your audiences, virtual and hybrid events may provide a much needed solution, providing both flexibility and freedom to your audience to choose the best format for them. So I'd like to move on to think about what lessons have been learned from 2020 on virtual. I think some of the challenges faced by organisers running virtual events have included the impact on revenues. These have been significantly impacted, with sponsors not prepared to pay for packages at the same levels for virtual events as they paid for in-person events previously. And where organisers were able to charge a delegate attendance fee, this is sometimes now 50 to 80% of their pre-pandemic delegate fee. Keeping sponsors happy has been challenging, ensuring they feel they're getting sufficient ROI compared with an in-person event. Engagement of audience has also proved tricky. How to make your event sticky and ensure audiences are not only watching, but getting involved too. And whilst the costs of staging virtual events are lower, making the profit margins higher than in-person events, I think the big lesson that we've learned is that the work required in terms of logistics, preparing speakers, supporting sponsors, and supporting the audience takes far more time than we'd anticipated. So how do you address some of these challenges? Well, I think you need to start with customer needs and understanding them better. It's more important than ever, and not just your attendees, but also your commercial partners. The best way to do this is via online surveys and also using conference producers to research with your audience. It's then vital to use these insights in developing compelling content, which is the crucial draw for your audience. An advantage that virtual offers is being able to get some of those difficult to secure top speakers from around the world. Now that they don't need to travel, they're able to fit in more virtual events. And the advantage is, for your paid for speakers in a virtual format, they tend to be considerably cheaper. A couple of positive outcomes for event organisers in offering ROI to sponsors is that they've seen increased reach from using the virtual format, partly because it's one way for individuals to be able to connect and engage with their peers during the crisis, but it's also much easier to attend a virtual event. This is obviously good news because it's increasing the size of the audience and can boost an event's financial viability and profitability over time. It's obviously also building your data, and it also in turn offers commercial partners extra reach and potentially access to more customer data themselves. Depending on the platform you use, you're also able to better track audience behaviour through a virtual event by being able to collect analytics on what they watched, how much they've networked and visited sponsors. This audience behaviour engagement information is really valuable for your commercial partners too. One of the challenges organisers have found over the past year is attendees' attendance at events. It's become clear that they're unlikely to attend all of a virtual event. This is because they've got used to consuming content in a way that suits them. They're not all able to attend at a set time. Some will dip in and out of an event, depending on the topics they're interested in, and others will combine watching live and then watching some sessions on demand post-event. In fact, many organisers I've spoken to have been surprised and pleased with the additional reach they've received with on-demand views that they've had. And anecdotally, Friday has proved to be the most popular day for audiences to view on-demand content. Networking and facilitating networking has been an ongoing challenge for many. Some of the areas that have been most successful for organisers have been using platforms which incorporate AI matching technology and offer speed networking functionality. And I've certainly heard a few organisers who've had success with facilitating 60-second to 5-minute quick-fire conversations between members of the audience. For sponsors, the most successful approach for most has been using small discussion groups and roundtables as a format, because this has enabled sponsors to more closely engage with delegates. A caveat to this is it's really important with these sorts of, with a roundtable format, to make sure they're well facilitated and the delegates attending are well briefed so that they, for example, switch on their cameras and get involved. Other organisers who've had challenges with networking have told me that they've had to resort to manually facilitated networking too. So managing sponsor expectations has been a big challenge for many over the past year. I think a big lesson from this process has been the need to handhold them throughout the process, manage their expectations and offer good communications. Finally, I think one key opportunity that virtual events offer is providing a low-cost means to test out topic ideas and to look at adjacent markets to expand into for existing events. At Tembo, we've seen this trend playing out since the beginning of the year, with organisers approaching us asking for validation and production work for launch events in virtual formats. So moving on, we've talked a bit about audience engagement being a real challenge. And I think by the end of last year, a lot of people were really suffering with Zoom fatigue. But how can you address that? Attendee engagement is obviously a critical element to your event. How do you stop them zoning out or clicking away? Audiences have shorter attention spans online. So think about the length of your events and formats that you use. In the research I did last year with event organisers, many felt that really 4 hours of content a day was probably the maximum that they got decent attendance at. They also needed to break this up with short breaks. And many also talked about lifting and shifting physical to virtual didn't work, and actually it made more sense to try and, rather than try and run a one-day event across one day, to actually run a one-day event across 2 days and a 2-day event across 3 days. Also, look at delivering shorter individual sessions. So potentially break down an individual session into different formats. You might use a combination of 3 quick 5 to 10 minute case studies followed by a short Q&A. Look to mix up your formats, potentially use a mixture of presentations, fireside chats, panel discussions, and roundtables. Think about your production values for your events. Audience expectations are increasing. They're increasingly expecting more of a TV production. And certainly we saw over the year more and more organisers using production studios with some great results. I was involved in producing Property Week's Resi programme in 2020, and they used a production studio with a mixture of speakers in the studio alongside the moderator and some beamed in virtually. It definitely had a more engaging feel, and feedback from delegates was that it was a more enjoyable watch. Consider having a professional MC or moderator. We used these at Property Week's Workspace and Resi last year, and they worked really well. The moderator role is even more vital than at an in-person event. Having an individual able to keep the event moving with energy and enthusiasm is vital. And they're also well equipped to deal with the unexpected, which is obviously can happen with virtual events. During sessions, if it's a live session, I think it's well worth putting a dedicated member of team onto monitoring the chat function in sessions and engaging with the audience right away by asking them a question like, where are you watching from? Planting questions and responding to any queries they have. I think this helps build rapport and engagement. I also think posting polls has worked really well in many events. It encourages participation, and I think from an audience perspective, it offers them the chance to benchmark their thoughts with their peers. So think about giving your attendees new ways to connect with one another. I think facilitated approaches like speed networking and roundtables, as I said before, have worked well. A couple of event organisers I know have offered incentives and rewards. So one used league tables throughout their event, highlighting attendees who were particularly active, networking with one another and commercial partners, and tracked how attendees were doing through the day with a league table, and then rewarded the individuals at the end of the day who'd networked the most with free tickets to the next event. Another organiser I know offered points for attendance, which unlocked access to additional elements, for example, a white paper. So I think these are all ideas to reflect on in terms of supporting engagement for your events. Let's move on to what could hybrid models look like in practice? There are a number of different models you could consider. And again, the starting point for whatever you choose needs to be based on customer needs and your objective for the event. The first option is to stream content to your virtual audience. So potentially have your presenters and an in-person attendees at a traditional venue, and then have all the sessions streamed out to a virtual audience. I think this gives you the opportunity to see how video production and streaming elements work in a venue. I think the slight challenges are the experience for in-house attendees is likely to be better than for your virtual attendees. And I guess the challenge for your virtual attendees is they're potentially going to feel a lack of engagement because there isn't any networking opportunity, making them feel a bit left out. The second option could be hybrid echo. This is the idea of running a live event, recording it, and then pushing it out at a later date. An option might be to run the virtual element a week or perhaps months later, using your pre-recorded content. A challenge is it's time consuming as you're effectively running two events across two separate time periods. And because of the content being pre-recorded, you lose some of the engagement, can't do live polls and Q&A. It might be an option then to consider integrating some live content into that model. But obviously pre-recorded content offers less risk. Then there's the full hybrid model. This is the idea of a combination of content, some streamed from the in-person event and some exclusive content offered separately to both audiences, giving equal appeal to both of your in-person and your virtual audiences. The idea is to go for a fully synchronized approach, offering everyone a beneficial experience. I think it also offers a meaningful experience for sponsors, audiences and speakers, but you require a physical venue, a virtual platform or a hybrid platform, and you also need a production company supporting both parts. You also need to give some thought to how you offer networking between in-person and virtual attendees. And I guess the challenge of this model is it's potentially quite costly to produce. The fourth option that many people are talking about is the subscription model. So this is the idea of moving to more of a 365 approach with a mixture of in-person only and virtual events held across the year. so that you're offering different touch points to your audience in different formats across the year as part of a subscription fee. So hopefully that gives you some ideas to reflect on. So then moving on, for my 4 key takeaways for what you decide to do next, I think you need to think about understanding your customers' needs. What is your objective for the event that you're putting on? Translate those needs into compelling and engaging content and offering powerful networking opportunities between all elements of your audience, so attendees and your sponsors and speakers. Virtual offers a low-cost route to test out event ideas or test out ideas in adjacent markets. And also think about creating a really good sales experience for your commercial partners, because this supports you retaining them for the future. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. And if you'd like any further information, please do email me. I've also given Mel Irving a copy of a report I did last year based on research with event organisers called Putting the Audience First and Offering Them an Engaging Experience. So please do ask Mel for a copy if you're interested in looking at that. Thank you.